Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I wanted to share with you guys my all-time favorite steak dinner recipe for two. I shared this recipe on my social media stories a couple weeks ago and you guys went crazy. I received like 1,000,001 requests to do a YouTube video. So today is the day. I'm going to show you how to make my favorite filet mignon steak with garlic, Parmesan mashed potatoes, and red wine mushrooms. This is my go-to recipe. I've been making it for years and years. We love this for celebrations and special occasions and holidays. You could just never go wrong with this dish. So for the mashed potatoes, I'm actually going to be using my creamy butter mashed potatoes. I have a separate video for that. I'll include it down in the video description box below. We're going to add some Parmesan and garlic, and then the steak seasoning is super simple. We're going to season it with some salt and pepper and then pan fry it with garlic and herbs. You guys are going to love this dish. Let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make it. And I'm going to get things started today with the steaks. I need to trim back all the silver skin and then any hard pieces of fat that aren't going to render. So you want to take a nice and sharp knife and work your way around the steak, get it nicely trimmed. Now you can also ask your butcher to do this for you when you're picking up your steaks at the grocery store. It's super easy to do at home too though. So I usually don't even bother, I just do it myself at home. Next, I'm going to pour a couple tablespoons of a good quality olive oil over the steaks. Next, I'm going to season with some coarse sea salt. Today I'm using Maldon sea salt flakes. And this coarse salt is actually really great for seasoning meat because it kind of cuts through the meat, really penetrates down in there to get it really well seasoned. I very generously season the steaks all over, and you want to make sure that you're getting the sides as well. What I like to do is just kind of mop up any salt that's fallen onto the tray to make sure that the sides are well seasoned too. And I'm going to place my steaks back into the refrigerator, let them marinate and season while I'm making my mashed potatoes and my red wine mushrooms. And I already have my mashed potatoes coming up to boil on my back burner. Again, I'm using my creamy butter mashed potatoes recipe. It's going to be down in the video description box below. Super easy recipe. Meanwhile, let's get started on these red wine mushrooms. They are the perfect complement for any steak. They're so delicious and aromatic. You guys are going to love them. And for my mushrooms, I'm preheating a large frying pan over medium heat. I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of my favorite salted butter. Just let that butter melt. Just going to make these mushrooms extra delicious. And for my mushrooms today, I'm using 12 large white mushrooms, and I did kind of like a chunky slice on them. You don't want them to be too thin. And drop them into the butter. And I'll add one large diced shallot. Toss this all together. My mushrooms have been frying for about 6 to 7 minutes and they're starting to get nicely browned. I'm going to season them generously with salt. Toss that together. Next, I'm going to add in my wine. Usually add about a cup of red wine, and today I'm using Cabernet. It's just going to add so much incredible flavor. I'm also going to add in about a tablespoon of fresh thyme, and I'm just going to let this simmer away on medium heat for about 10 to 12, even 15 minutes until that wine is reduced. It should have a thick syrupy type of consistency where it coats the mushrooms really nicely. And check this out, just 10 minutes later we have almost no liquids left in the pan. The mushrooms are really nicely coated and they smell so incredibly delicious. These are all done. I'm going to remove them from the heat and just keep them nice and warm. And while I was reducing my red wine mushrooms, my potatoes finished cooking. I got them all mashed and buttered up. Next, I'm going to add in a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And I'm also going to add in a teaspoon of garlic powder. Mine just has little flakes of parsley in there as well. And I'm going to add in some freshly chopped parsley. And just grab a spatula and mix that in. So you want to do this while the potatoes are still nice and hot so that Parmesan cheese really kind of melts into the mashed potatoes. You guys are going to love the flavors of these potatoes. I have my mashed potatoes and red wine mushrooms all done. I'm going to keep them on my stovetop so they're nice and warm, and I'm also preheating my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And now let's get started on the steaks. So I just took these out of the refrigerator. I'm going to grab a little paper towel. I'm just going to pat them so they're nice and dry. You don't want any excess moisture. When they're nice and dry, you're going to get that really nice caramelized sear on the steaks. And I'm going to preheat my frying pan over medium-high heat. You want to make sure that you pick the right size pan. So you don't want it to be too big or too small. This one is going to be perfect for 2 steaks. And that way the heat distribution is going to be really nice and even. You'll get that really nice caramelized color on there. It's super, super important that your pan is piping hot. So you want to wait until it's really, really nice and hot before adding your steaks in there. Now today I'm using a stainless steel pan. You could also use a cast iron pan. I find it's really hard to get a nice sear with a nonstick pan because you can't heat them to the proper temperature. So if you have a cast iron or stainless steel, it's time to take it out of the cabinet and use it for this recipe. Going to be adding in some avocado oil, and this is the best oil for high temperature cooking. Once that pan is nice and hot, I'm going to add in my steaks. And I'm going to brown the steaks all over for a couple minutes on each side until it's really nicely brown. Check out that color, that looks so good. This one has a couple more minutes, maybe about a minute left. And don't forget to brown the sides of the steaks too. So I like to turn them over, get a little sear on the sides as well. And once I have the steaks nicely brown, it's time to add the rest of our seasonings. I love lots of garlic, so I'm actually going to add about 8 or 9 cloves, but 3 to 4 will also work. And I'm going to add in some fresh thyme. A couple tablespoons of butter on top of each steak to add even more flavor. Next, a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce. And a couple tablespoons of red wine. And once you've added the red wine into the pan, these steaks are ready for the oven. And I'm going to finish my steaks off in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I usually do about 3.5 minutes per side. Now I like my steak to be medium rare, even a rare plus, so if you want your steak to be a medium doneness, just increase that cooking time to about 4.5 minutes per side. My steaks were in the oven for 3 minutes exactly. I'm going to take them out of the oven, turn the steaks over. Just baste them with that incredible sauce to make sure that your steaks have all the maximum flavor. And these are going to go back into the oven for another 3 minutes. And while my steaks are resting, I'm going to start by plating up some of my mashed potatoes and those incredible red wine mushrooms. And I like to pile those mushrooms on top of the potatoes. And then sprinkle with some chopped parsley to add a little pop of beautiful color. I recommend letting the steaks rest for at least 5 minutes, and I actually like to take them out of the pan and onto a tray so they don't continue cooking. I'm going to grab a nice and sharp knife and let's cut into it so you guys can see what it looks like on the inside. And check that out, isn't that gorgeous? I absolutely love the doneness of it. For me, when it's a little bit more rare, the meat is just extra soft, extra tender, and so flavorful. Can't wait to dig in to enjoy this. And then I also like to grab a spoon and pour some of that pan sauce along with the garlic over the steak. It's going to add so much incredible flavor. You won't even need any steak sauce with this. And that is it for my special filet mignon dinner for two. Of course, you can always size this recipe up if you want to serve more people. For the full recipe, don't forget to head on down the video description box. I have a link there that'll take you over to my website so you can find the full recipe, and I'm going to include more cooking tips so you have the perfect steak every single time. Now let's dig in and enjoy. The steak looks so incredibly delicious. Looks so good. You're gonna dip it into some of that pan sauce with the garlic in there. It is incredible. You guys can be blown away with the flavors. This filet mignon steak is so incredibly flavorful and juicy, and it is so tender it just melts in your mouth. Those flavors of the garlic and a little bit of the wine and the Worcestershire sauce in the pan, they add so much incredible flavor. This is my type of steak. I wish I could eat this every single day. It is so incredibly delicious. Now let's give these creamy mashed potatoes and mushrooms a try. These mushrooms smelled so good while they were cooking in the pan. Just wow, you guys will be blown away with the flavors of those mushrooms. They are so incredibly delicious. They still have a lot of like crunch and good mushroom texture to them, and the flavor from that red wine and the shallots and the thyme, it is just mind-blowing. And I love the garlicky Parmesan potatoes. The garlic is not overwhelming because you don't want it to be too overwhelming. You have the really great steak and the mushrooms, so I didn't add too much garlic in there, and it's just the perfect balance. You guys are going to love this dish. Any special celebration, any holiday, this is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this recipe at home as much as I do, and I'll see you next time with a new video.